Hello, students. I hope you're doing well. I'm Sharanya, your physics educator here at Study Room. So, today we're going to be starting a brand new chapter. And what is the chapter called? It's called Human Eye and the Colorful World. Okay, so in this chapter, you're going to be studying a lot of interesting things like things about yourself, really, about your eye, how your eye works, what are the different parts of your eye, why do people wear spectacles, what is the physical phenomenon that is going on behind spectacles. Like, does one specs work for everyone? No, right? Everyone has a different power, and you will also learn about different types of lenses that you already know about that are used in the spectacles, and why a spectacle cannot be used by two different people, and why it is different for different people. Okay, so it is a super interesting and super relatable chapter. These are things that you are going to be seeing in real life, like questions like how is a rainbow formed, why do the stars twinkle. These are all questions that you must have asked yourself or someone else at some point in time. So we are going to answer all of these questions. Okay, let's go. Now, the first question here is a very important question that is posed here. Why do we study the human eye? Okay, does anyone have any answer to that? There is no right or wrong answer to this question. We study the human eye basically because it is such an essential part of our body, right? Can you imagine functioning without your eyes? Like, I'm sure that even as kids, you were told that you should be thankful that you have two eyes, 2 ears, right? So eyes were always told to you to be a very big gift from God. So why is that? Because eyes are actually enabling you to see the different colors in the world. They're enabling you to see people around you, right? So it is actually a very big gift. Let's so that is like a more philosophical point of view, right? But if you think about it more scientifically also, it is important to know the function of an eye, because very important phenomena like refraction is happening actually every second in your eye. So that is why it is more important for us to study what is happening during when you're seeing things. Okay, now, how many colors can you actually differentiate? I don't think a lot of you knew this, but our human eye can actually differentiate 10 million different colors. It's pretty impressive, right? So now we're just going to watch a short video, okay? Let's go. Okay, so what do you see is this? Can you just give a guess to what this is? The picture that you see on the screen right now? It's actually looking into your eye. Like, if you were to, so to say, cut your eye in half, that sounds very bad, but just for observation purposes, if your like the outer side of your eye was transparent and you could see everything that was actually inside your eye, this is what you would see. Okay, and this is how light comes into your eye. It is basically what is happening when two light rays meet like this. What is the word we use for it? The light rays converge at this point. Can you see that at this point, at the end, these light rays are meeting, and if you can see clearly, one quick signal is being sent. So what is that signal? That is basically nothing but your optic nerves sending signals to your brain about whatever your eye is seeing. Okay, now let's move on. So you just saw this video in which these two light rays were basically passing through the front of your eye and meeting somewhere at the back of your eye, right? And then these quick, like, lightning flashes were being like going to the right side through some tube like thing, right? That is actually your optic nerve, and that is how the eye tells your brain that is how the optic nerve is sending signals to your brain, which your eye is telling you, like, okay, this is the color blue, this is the color green. That is how you are able to distinguish 10 million different colors. Okay, now moving on. Says why the human eye is one of the most significant sense organs. So you were always told that all of your sense organs, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your tongue, all of your sense organs are extremely important to you, right? So even if you didn't have any one of these sense organs, that would really make it difficult for you to go on with life, right? But why is your eye especially important? If your eye wasn't there, you wouldn't have been able to see the different colors and the actual beauty of life, the sight part of the beauty of life. Definitely the smell of different things, the touch, the textures of different things, how different things sound, the sound of birds, the sound of people talking, that everything is definitely does have a very big meaning in life too. But I'm sure you all agree that your sight just gives everything a much bigger dimension, and it just brings everything together, right, in one picture, so to say. Okay, so if you want to read here, your PPT also says that on closing the eyes, we can identify objects to some extent by their smell, taste, sound, or by touch, but we do not know the color of the object. So that is why our beautiful human eye is important to see the colorful world around us. Okay, moving on. Now, the structure of the human eye. So, this might seem very complex to look at, but we are going to be studying in physics, we are going to be studying the role of only certain parts of the eye, like the sclera, the macula, the vitreous body. All of these things are important from a biological point of view. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying in our context, in a physics context, I'm going to be using only some parts of the eye, like the cornea, the pupil, the retina, the lens in the eye. All of that is important to us from a physics point of view. Okay, now we're going to watch another short video. Okay, so in this video, I'm just going to show you a small part of this video. You're basically going to see how the light enters your eye, where it is focused, and what happens once the light is focused in a place. Okay, let's go. So in this video, we're going to see how basically light enters your eye and what happens when light enters your eye afterwards. Okay, let's go. So here, I'm just going to tell you one more thing that I already told you. So here, I just told you that in that video, we could see that the light was entering your eyes and it was being focused somewhere at the back of the eye. And then you could see these quick lightning flashes through some nerve, right? I told you that that is your eyes sending neurosignals or basically some messages to your brain. So that is what it is showing here in the video also, that the actual reason that you're able to perceive colors is because of your brain. Your eye just tells your brain, the eye just sends signals to the brain. The brain actually perceives those signals. It basically decodes that message sent from the eye and finally tells you that, okay, this color that you are seeing is red. This color that you are seeing is green. Okay. Now, this is the structure of the eye. Okay, this here is the cornea. It is written right here. This cornea is that transparent substance that is bulging out in your eyes. Okay, the pupil, as it is marked here, is basically that opening through which light enters your eye. Okay, and here you can see that this light is entering, this beam of light is entering your eye, and all the way back here, can you see where my mouse is? All the way back here, the light is being converged or is being focused. We're going to come to that in a bit, okay? But basically right now you need to know what the cornea is. It's that bulging part of the eye, and the pupil is where the light enters the eye, okay? Now, what happens is this part of your eye that is written lens is basically nothing other than the lens that you studied in the last chapter. It is actually a lens. That is actually where refraction of the light takes place. Like light is coming, it is refracted and the image is formed somewhere here at the back where the light rays are converging. This part that is marked the iris, you'll just learn the different uses. I'll just tell you the different uses of this. But these muscles that you can see over the lens, can you see these little striped lines? These are the muscles in the eye that are basically responsible for contracting or expanding the lens, making it small or making the lens big. Why that is required, all of that we're just going to do. Okay, right, it is marked here, muscles. These are the muscles above and below the lens. These muscles basically work to either, if these muscles are tightly pulled, if the lens is between these muscles like this, okay, if these muscles are pulled like this, the lens becomes thicker. If these muscles are contracted, the lens becomes wider or thicker. Sorry, when the muscles are pulled, the lens becomes thin, right? The muscles go away from each other, so they become thin, just like a rubber band. If you have a rubber band in your hand and you stretch the rubber band, if you cut the rubber band in half, you hold its two ends and you stretch it, you know the rubber bands become thin. You can see that it's become thinner and thinner, and as soon as you bring it closer, the rubber band it returns to its original thickness. So just like that, when these muscles contract, the lens becomes thin, and when these muscles relax, these lens become normal or thick. And why this thickening and thinning of the lens is required, all that we're going to learn. Okay. See, so the lens just became thinner. Could you see the shape of the lens changing? I'm just going to show it to you once again. Look at the lens. The shape of the lens is changing, right? So that is what the muscle basically does. The muscle pulls itself or relaxes itself in order to make the lens thick or make the lens thin. And how is it decided? Does the lens need to be thicker? Does the lens need to be thinner? It is decided by where the image has to be formed. Okay. It is all going to make more sense in a bit. Now, this region, this yellow shaded region, or in fact this whole region at the back of the eye is known as the retina, as it is written here in the yellow box. Now, the retina is basically, you remember when we were doing lenses, we talked about screens, right? So the retina is basically the screen in this case. The screen is where the image is formed, right? So in case of an eye, the retina is where the image is formed. Okay. Then, in this retina, there are basically two types of cells. One is rods and the second one is cones. So what do these two types of cells do? The rods basically are responsible for, they're basically sensitive to light. So the rods are able to tell you if you are in a darker region or if you are in a region where there is a lot of light. The cones are able to tell you about different colors. So how you can remember this is C for cones and C for colors. So you can remember it like this. Cones help us see different colors. So then rods are photosensitive. So they just help you see how dark a room is, or just help you perceive how dark or bright a room is. Okay. And this point where all the light is converged is known as the fovea. It's just a biological term. Okay. Now, that is how image formation takes place in your eyes. Okay. Light comes through the pupil, the cornea, through the cornea, and then the pupil is the opening basically. Then it goes through the lens. The lens have those muscles on both sides which can contract and relax, and the shape of the lens can be changed. The light is converged at the retina. The retina is the screen, and the retina has rods and cones. Okay. Now, as I told you, there are only few parts that are going to be of importance to us right now. So I'm just going to tell you just a little bit about those different parts of the eye. Okay. So the first important part, I'm just going to circle it here. Okay. The first important part for us is the cornea. Second is the iris, then the pupil, the lens, and the retina. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the main things that you have to know about. So, one, cornea is basically the thin membrane through which light enters. Thin membrane which is bulging out, and through this membrane, light enters your eye. Okay, the bulging out membrane. Second thing is the iris. Iris is responsible for controlling the size of the pupil. Okay. Next is the pupil. What does the iris control? The pupil, which is light enters from it. Fourth part is the lens, and the fifth part is the retina. I'll just write it and then I'll explain it to you. Okay. Retina is the screen. Now, I just told you that cornea is just the thin membrane or the bulging out part in the front of the eye. That is where the light initially comes in from. Then the iris is responsible for controlling the size of the pupil. So now, what is the pupil? You saw in the video right now that the pupil is basically that opening, right? Through which light enters, the opening or the slit, whatever you want to call it, through which light actually enters your eye. Now, think about it. Whenever you go from a dark room suddenly to the sun, you can't open your eyes completely, right? So your eyes take some time to adjust to the bright light, right? Or I should do this thing. Grab one of your family members, either your mother, your father, or your brother. Just grab them and just quickly tell them to open their eyes and put a torchlight in their eyes and look at the black or the small black circle inside their eye. You'll see that it becomes very small as soon as you put the light in. What is that? That is the pupil actually contracting. So think about this. If I want a lot of light to come into a room, I open the door, right? I open the door, I open the windows, I open everything. But when I want lesser light to come in, I close everything, right? Similarly, in the eye, when your eye is suddenly exposed to a lot of light, say when you hit the torch into your family member's eye, that's a lot of light coming in and your eye doesn't want to damage itself. So what it does is it reduces the size of the pupil. So once the size of the pupil is reduced, is more light going to be able to come in or less light? Lesser light is going to be able to come in, right? So it protects your eye in that way. Similarly, when you go into a darker room, you're not able to see things clearly because there is not a lot of light that can be reflected back from the objects to make the objects visible, right? So what does your eye do? It expands your pupils so that if it expands, what does that mean? More light is coming in or less light? More light is coming in, right? So if more light comes in, then you are able to see things a little better. You won't be able to see things as well as you can when there is light, but for a dark room, as much light you can take into your eyes, that is as much light reflected from the objects you can take into your eyes, you need it so that you're able to at least tell where the bed or the table is so that you don't go knocking on stuff, you don't go hitting yourself on stuff, right? So that is the role of the pupil. It basically becomes bigger or smaller depending on how much light wants to come into the eye, how much light should come into the eye. And what does the iris do? Iris basically controls the size of the pupil. So the expansion and the smallening of the pupil is done by the iris. Okay. Next is the lens. What does the lens do? You saw that this part of the eye, this part right here, this part of the eye is the lens, which basically provides finer focal length adjustments. This would make sense to you more in a bit, but basically your eye lens has the ability to go like this, just with like we saw in the video, like thicken like this or become thin like this. So what the eye lens does is when the lens is becoming thicker and thinner, the focal length is changing, right? So depending upon where the image has to be formed, the eye lens changes its shape, changes its thickness so that focal length can change. Okay, then what is the retina? The last thing that we have to study about the retina is nothing but the screen where the image is formed. Now, do you remember what I said? Whenever the light rays are actually meeting in real life, is the image formed real and inverted or is it virtual and erect? Because it is meeting in real life, so it's real and inverted, right? So that is also one thing that is very interesting, that the image that is being formed at the back of your eye, at the retina, that is the screen, is a real and inverted image. Okay.